Shall we begin, sir? Welcome to 44 and 1. GVizzle, Tempest.
I'm still baffled.
We were making with the jibber jabber before we started, so now we feel awkward.
Yeah.
It's like finally kissing halfway through foreplay.
yeah. Oh yes, I forgot.
Oh yeah, hi.
Yeah.
I'm GVizzle.
Yeah. So I do that all the time as part of my repertoire. I like to keep people on their toes. The feral cat charity, where we got our cats from and that we fostered the other two for, another one of the cats that was adopted. Oh shit, my computer just jingled. Anyway, one of the cats that's he's called Jeff, and I don't know if this is going to be in a local newspaper or something, but he's got a new claim to fame, this cat, because the other day he was out hunting. He's an outdoor cat, and he caught a shrew that has never been seen before in the British Isles.
No way.
Yeah, and he's been catching them, and a lot of them they managed to like release them back into the wild, but one of them they sent the corpse to a lab to get DNA tested to find out what shrew it was. They're like, oh my god, this has never been here before. This is a new family.
So is that potentially problematic? Like, could this be an invasive species of shrew?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know much about it, and this is coming from somebody random, but I think that there's nothing really about the shrew that we need to worry about. It's not like red and grey.
That's what Australia thought about rabbits once upon a time. Someone brought a couple rabbits to Pennsylvania or to Australia, and now there's like a bajillion of them. Yeah,
but I don't think there's anything particular about it in terms of its hunting patterns or its size or anything like that. So, there's plenty of stuff. I mean, the cats, plenty of stuff will eat it. Keep the population down. Yeah.
That's true. They need to bring more coyote. I know they have dingoes in Australia because coyotes eat the rabbits here.
And dingoes ate that woman's baby.
Yes, they did, and they didn't believe her. Did I ever tell you about the weird rabbit corpse I found in my backyard?
Yes, but I can't remember if we spoke about it on here, so
I don't think we did. So I was walking. So the dogs were outside one day, and in the back of our property, because you don't need to know the reasons why. It's just wood chipped. And so I'm seeing something like furry in the wood chips, and I go investigate, and it is, trigger warning, the body of a rabbit, and then the ears of the rabbit, but no face.
God.
And like, I'm still trying to CSI this shit. I'm still trying to piece it together, because had it been a coyote, there would have been no evidence left whatsoever. Maybe a little bit of blood on the wood chips, but he would have eaten all of it, not just his face. At first, we thought like maybe it was a bird, like a hawk or something, that had grabbed the rabbit and then like chomped down a little too hard in midair, and then the pieces fell. But what are the odds that they would have fallen so closely? So now I've decided it's a threat.
Well, the dogs are obviously taking care of it then.
What?
Oh, I thought you said the rabbit was a threat.
No, whoever put it there.
Oh, threatening you. Yeah,
sure.
GVizzle.
But yeah, it was so bizarre. Like, had there been a face, a head, it would have been perfectly anatomically like body. Ears.
I know who it is.
Who's that?
It's that woman that fancies GVizzle's bloke at his work. It's her. There's nobody else it could be.
That was like 18 years ago.
Yeah, love doesn't die.
Sadly, it does. We've moved since. I mean, what's that? That's not going to stop her.
No, exactly. Yeah,
I mean, that's she's playing the long con.
Yeah. One of my ex-girlfriends, her little sister had a couple of traumatic incidents with pets when she was a kid. So they had a Jack Russell Terrier called Rosie. I think I've sent you a picture of her before. Fucking lovely dog. Anyway, so Emily had a pet rabbit, and they were saying to her, keep the rabbit in the hutch, don't take it out and play with it, because Rosie's in the garden. And Jack Russell Terriers love eviscerating rabbits. Trigger warning. And the rabbit's fine in the end, just so people know. But
okay.
Yeah. So she, but anyway, didn't listen to the parents, got the rabbit out, started playing with it, and Rosie just bolts for it, picks up the rabbit in her jaws, like goes straight for the jugular, and starts shaking it around, blood everywhere. Yeah. And then
the rabbit was fine?
Yeah. Just had to have it sewn back up. It just kind of lacerated some of its neck, but it was all right.
Damn.
Yeah. They managed to get the dog off. But they were like, "We told you!" And then she's just screaming in the garden. The other one was that she didn't
That's
find
the kind of thing that like you're telling a therapist about 15 years later.
Yeah, it is. It is. The other one, she had a pet gerbil, I think, or a hamster, and she didn't find out what happened to it for a long time. It's when she was older, her mum told her what actually happened to it. So this one really does have a trigger warning. So like at night, Rosie would stay in the kitchen, but one night the gerbil slash hamster escaped from the cage and got downstairs into the kitchen. And then my ex went down in the morning to get her breakfast. And then there was just this gerbil corpse just lying there, just all intact, except no face. Yeah, and a little puddle of blood. Yeah.
I would like Gozer and Zool, whenever they see a rabbit or a chipmunk or squirrel in our backyard, they run for it. And they've never, but I don't know, like I have someone I worked with who, like in the span of a year, her dog had brought her 3 squirrels and 2 rabbits. And I don't know that I could lick up my dogs to say, like, it's already hard enough to lick a Gozer after he's got a mouthful of shit. I don't know if I could look at my dogs again after seeing like that they had a crime scene that they had committed. Although Zool's attempted murder twice and I was there both times. But
Yeah. Well, that was defensive.
It was provoked. It was
provoked. Well, I kind of I'm in two minds with my cats. Like one of the reasons, there was 2 reasons why we decided to turn them to indoor cats. One was that we didn't want them roaming around this new area that we moved to because we're too close to a main road, really. And like if you're within like a mile of a main road, you don't really want your cats like leaving the house because they'll walk up to 2 miles. And people have no idea that they do that. But the second reason is that Hermione and Padme are really good at hunting. They have quite a high success rate. And then when we lived in the field, which is fine there because there's an abundance of life and all that, and there's a lot to explore. But when you're in an urban environment, it's harder for those little animals to survive. Plus, you've got all the other cats, because like Hermione and Padme were probably 2 of about 10 cats in this square mile area, so there wasn't that many. And they would frequently, a couple times a week, bring rodents into the house that they'd caught, and they'd play with them, or they'd eat them, or whatever. Sometimes they caught birds.
For some reason, I'm okay when cats do it because it feels like it's a natural thing for cats to do. And I know it is for dogs, but I just don't.
I think maybe it's because of how we think about them. I think you're right. Like, because cats, we just grow up knowing that they're, even though they're prey animals, but they're also apex predators in a sense. That, you know, they do have these natural urges that they will fulfill. But with dogs, because of the bond that humans have with dogs, it's more like our hunting with the dogs kind of has a bit more of a team feel to it. Like we go out, we hunt together, and we hunt big stuff that we need to feed the village with. Whereas cats go off and like they, like cats, you want them hunting in a way. You want them to have those natural instincts because they keep rat populations down. They get rid of lots of other, you know, like how like spiders keep your house clean. You know, cats are like that. And yeah, and I think it's just different expectations there.
I've also heard that outdoor cats have a much shorter lifespan than indoor cats.
Massively, by about 10 years, I think.
That's crazy. I wish dogs had the same lifespan as cats.
Yeah. Is it like you were saying that the bigger they get, the they don't live as long?
The shorter the lifespan. Yeah, I think recently they've discovered that it's dependent on the size of the dog. So the bigger the dog, the bigger that number. So it would be 9 to 1, whereas like a really small dog, it might be 5 to 1. So so like my mom's dog, because it's like a 12, 14-pound dog, has probably a 15 to 18-year lifespan. But like a Great Dane would have maybe a 7 to 9 if you're lucky.
That it?
Yeah.
Shit.
That's the bad thing about getting pets. It's like every time you bring a pet home, you're like, you're going to destroy my life in 12 to 14 years.
Well, this is where stoicism comes in handy. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, actually, because one of my TikTok buddies, Luke, his cat, he had to put his cat down the other day, and he only had him for 8 or 9 years. And it just kind of gets you thinking, like, I've got to go for that at some point soon, like within about the next 6 years, I think. Yeah.
So we Don't make me cry. I don't want to ruin my makeup.
Oh, we could
So,
talk about something else.
so Zool's 8, and because
Mm.
of her size, hopefully we can get like 12 to 14 years.
Mm.
Gozer's 4, but because of his size, we're probably more the 10 to 12. So there's a risk that we could lose both of them within kind of a short order of one another, and that would destroy me. I think I'm afraid of watching the show Hoarders, because every time, like, I've watched like 1 or 2 episodes or parts of one of those 2 episodes, and every time I've seen it, it's like, oh, this person was completely, totally normal, living their best life, and then their husband divorced them, and now she collects his toenail clippings, right? Like, I feel
yeah.
I feel like that could be me. Like, if we lose the dogs, I'd be like, no, that's it. I'm gonna take every hair I find and put it in a little shadow box.
It's a possibility. I mean,
It's a scary possibility.
Yeah. I think one of the things that helps me, and then again, it's not something that's going to help everybody, but like, I try and practice stoicism, which the aspect of it I'm talking about here is where you put yourself mentally in the situation that you're most worried about. So I sit there and I imagine like losing my cats, and like, what would happen if I had to put one of them down? How would I feel? And then, like, you basically, it's like taking a little bit of poison, you kind of build up a resilience to it. And then, so, because a lot of the bad, like, the worst part when you're going through grief is the way it hits you, the surprise, and just that immediate feeling of loss.
I don't know, because I've lost pets before, right? And like, so I know exactly how it's gonna go, and it's gonna be fucking ugly. It's gonna I know how it's gonna feel, because I have felt it before, but like, I feel like it's gonna be even worse this time, because when we lost Dally, 8 years ago, dang, and it destroyed me when we had to say goodbye to her. But I have a different connection with Zool and Gozer than I did with Dally. So as bad as that was, I know these are going to be worse. Like, I already know. And like, when I put myself into that place, I'm already like, someone needs to invent that machine from Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
I won't be able to cope. I won't cope well.
Yeah. So
just the thought of it. The first time I had to buy senior food, I got a little teary.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, maybe we should talk about dotting the I and J, because it's a bit more lighthearted. Yeah. The dot is a tittle, on a die it's a pip. Yeah, I remember that from a song.
I didn't even think. What I have learned from this experience, for anyone who doesn't know, I asked the question on TikTok, do you dot your I's? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. I was called in the comment sections a psychopath on several occasions.
Well, I didn't do that.
and oh, not just you. An animal? Was I raised by wolves? How do I function in society? And then some people were like, okay, do you cross your T's? Of course I do, because that's the completion of the letter. As far as I'm concerned, the tittle is like Parmesan on pasta. It's a flourish. It's not part of the letter.
But like, the system exists, right, for a reason. It's how order is maintained in the world. Wars are started because things are worded badly or not written correctly.
Also, it's in the context of the word. Like, some people even said it looked like a small L. I'm worried about those people, because that's an L. That's an I. Like, they're very different. But you can read in the context of the word. And if you think it's a different letter, you would read it in the word. Like, if someone was writing quiet and you're like, oh, what does Quillette mean? It's not an L. It's no other letter. You know what it is.
But, right, you also got to think that some people can't read very well. Some people have visionary problems. Some people, English isn't their first language. And it's just for the well-being of your fellow brother and sister.
Perhaps. And if I was writing for someone else, maybe I would exercise more caution. But typically, if I'm writing something, it's for myself.
Well, maybe, right? You should have specified that in the video, and nobody would be calling you a psychopath.
Well, no, even if I write for other people. But a lot of people were checking they're like, I don't know if I do this or not. Let me check my notes. And they went and they're like, oh, yeah, I do. Or, no, I don't. But no, I think even if I write for someone else, here's accessing. When I have written for other people, I will exercise more caution, but I still don't dot. It'll be neater, but there will still be no dots. And then one person said, and this one actually resonated with me. They said, if they're printing, never. In cursive, there may or may not be an I over the general word, but not specifically over the letter. One person said they dot first and then.
Well, no, that's just ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. Have you seen the people as well that instead of just doing a quick dot, they do a little circle?
Yes, there was one time. So that's how I feel about dots. So a friend of mine, the one who noticed it, she was very disturbed by it. She was very concerned. So we were sitting in a meeting one day and she was sitting beside me. And so I made sure as I was I took copious notes that meeting, more than I have ever taken before in my entire life. And I made sure that every single I did it with a heart. Just so, so she looked over and she was just like, what the fuck? But,
yeah.
It is surprisingly difficult to remember. When you don't do it, it is very difficult to remember to do it. Because as I was noting, I was putting my little hearts. And then I went back to read my notes. I had missed like 40% of them.
See, and then now you're starting to understand my struggle with when I realized that I'm breathing.
That's fair. And J's, I didn't even think dotting J's was a thing until you and a couple other people brought it up in the comments. Like I was floored. I was like, who the fuck dots their J's?
In the form of cursive that I use, you don't dot the J in that, I don't think. But then when I'm doing block letters, then I dot the J. And
then a couple people commented that they dot their lowercase i's, but not their uppercase i's. And that was also a cause for concern for me because no one dots their uppercase i's.
No.
I don't do the two lines, but that's how you're supposed to.
And I just refresh my memory. I did a lowercase j, and I do indeed, if I do cursive, I dot the J.
You do. See, it's interesting that people don't realize what they do and don't do.
Yeah, it's unconscious, isn't it? I got taught how to do my cursive writing by an 85-year-old nun called Sister Bernadine.
Just randomly, or was this in school?
It was in school, yeah. Yeah, it wasn't just some old woman that would like accost me on the way home.
Sonny,
yeah, come here a little while. It's how I got my love for older women.
85-year-old nuns?
Can you imagine?
That's a fetish.
Yeah. There was actually like an article in the news once, if I remember. Like it was a bloke in his early 30s. He was like with a woman she was about 72. That's a bit weird, right? That's what just meant.
Either way, it's weird. Like,
yeah.
I think some age gaps are easier to overcome, especially depending on where you are, right? Like when my parents met, they were 16 and 24. Like there's no business a 24-year-old has with a 16-year-old. Like there's nothing you have in common, right? Like you're presumably either just finishing, not in my parents' case because they were in Portugal and it was a different time, different place, different blah, 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 blah. But today, right? Like if my niece was in grade, 11, and a grown man got off work and went to pick her up from school, so that 8 years then sounds dramatic, but like 40 and 48 or 35 and 43, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But there's no age range where 42 years
exactly
is like, oh yeah, you must have a lot in common.
When you get to more normal age gaps, I don't understand why people have such strong opinions about it. Like, I would say up to 20 years. And then, and then it's kind of like on a sliding gradient that like it starts getting really weird after about 20 years.
But again, I think it depends on when, right? Like Dane Cook recently got engaged and he's, I don't know their ages. I'm going to say he's 50 and she's like 23. And when they've been dating for like 5 years. So she was 18 and he was 45, right? Like, or something around that age. And that 40 to 60, sure. 30 to 50, sure. But like a teenager and like, it's just when the age range takes place, to me means more than the amount of years in the gap.
Yeah, totally. And then, because like that's the thing, I think some people's criticisms are just really weird. Like they're just so focused on the wrong thing. So like one of them, for example, that was like, because this all came about because I saw a TikTok about it and people getting weird in the comments and being really weirdly critical about just normal age gaps. And
social media, you don't say.
Yeah. And I was like, why do you guys care so much about what other people do in their own time? But the other one is like, well, there's just no future in it, is there? Because if there's like a 15-year age gap and then like she's 20 and he's 35, then, you know, what are they going to do? There's no future there. And it's like, well, not every relationship.
There's like 50 years of future.
Yeah. And the other thing is that people just, why does everything have to be forever? Like, not everything is eternity. Some things
there's like just, a 50% divorce rate.
Yeah. Just enjoy it for what it is while you've got it, and then get the most out of it.
Appreciate it for the time that you have, because not, like you said, not everything lasts forever. You can't be guaranteed, as lovely as it is to assume that you're going to get married and it's going to be forever. Statistically speaking, that is not the case. So you'll probably get divorced before one of you dies.
Yeah. I think for me personally, like my range would be about 5 years younger than me to about 10 to 15 older than me. And then that's
well, your current partner is what, 8 years older than you?
14, I think.
Oh, 14 years older.
Yeah, I can't remember.
My husband is a year younger than I am.
Got your younger man.
But we also started dating when I was 21 and he was 20, so it's not like I could have gone 5 years younger. Yeah. We had where there was a small window of opportunity.
Yeah, it would have been a bit awkward, wouldn't it? A bit dodgy. You'd have been on a register.
Yeah. Is this your son? No.
I think one of the things that will probably surprise people is the amount of female nonces in prison. Do you call them nonces over there?
We do not.
Oh, okay. So someone that likes fiddling with kids is called a nonce.
We call them the pedophile.
Pedo to us, pedophile is P.
I know, that's why I was surprised you said migraine instead of migraine.
Yeah.
But you also spell pedophile with an A-E, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we spell it differently.
And we've dropped we're economical. We dropped the A.
Dropped the A. Yeah, and like, there's a lot of them in prison, female ones. So. Do
you also call the males nonces, or are they?
Oh no, basically that's where it comes from. Is that the men were called nonces. People didn't realize that women could do the same thing, and then now they call the women nonces too.
So where does nonce come from? How did that evolve from pedophile?
No idea. I'll look it up later. Nonce etymology.
So I was curious today.
Yeah.
Speaking of etymology, so and I think this may be a generational thing. So I was watching a couple of TikTok videos this morning, and it was women around my age who were telling stories about like their weekends and stuff. And a couple of them were like, oh, I was out with my girlfriends. And then another one was like, I was out with my girlfriends. And it made me think that like and I sometimes will say that too, right? Like I'll say, oh, my girlfriends and I get together for book club, where I could just say friends because the gender is irrelevant.
Yeah.
But men never say like I'm hanging out with my guy friends or my boyfriends. It's always just friends. But women of a certain age, because like my niece will just say friends. She's 21. She just says friends. She doesn't distinguish. So like, why is it that women of a certain generation, like I think it's probably Gen X and above, distinguish my girlfriends versus just my friends?
Yeah. And I'm wondering if that is a North American thing as well, because none of my mates growing up did that either.
No?
No.
Maybe this is a North American thing.
Yeah.
Probably learned it from TV.
Well, I'm wondering as well, like if, because like you get a lot of cultural, I guess, pressure from the United States, and they could be quite conservative in who can be friends with whom, and women typically weren't allowed to be friends with men.
That's true. That's probably why they distinguish their girlfriends. Relax.
Yeah, exactly. I'm friends with females, and that's it.
Yeah. Because now, I mean, like if I hear someone say girlfriend, I I will assume that it's actually a romantic partner because so this one time, so when my husband and I first got engaged, it felt really weird to say fiance, and even husband feels kind of weird, even 20 plus years in. So when we first started, actually, it was probably before we got engaged, I would just call him the wife, and he would call me the wife, right? It was nothing really gendered or malicious, or there was nothing behind it other than we thought it was funny to be like the wife.
Yeah.
So there's a guy I worked with, and he knew that I called my husband, or at the time fiance, the wife. So I was training one week, and like there was 5 or 6 people in training, and he would have to. So he was just changing his role, so he would only come in for like a morning here, an afternoon there. So he wasn't part of the entire class. So he comes in. Every time he would come into class, he'd be like, "Hey, how's a wife?" I'm like, "Oh, wife's good, thanks." And then we'd get on with the day. And this is going back like 15 years. And then so this happens like 2 or 3 times. And then on like the Thursday of class, he comes in. He's like, "Hey, how are you?" "Good, good." "How's the wife?" I'm like, "Oh, wife's good." I was like, "Anyway, last night." So I started telling a story about the wife. And I was like, "Oh, he had some friends over last night, and he and his friends." And one of the women in class just started chuckling. And she was like, "All week, I was so proud of you for being out." And it was like the first time in my life I apologized for not being a lesbian. I'm like, "Oh, God, I'm so sorry."
That's so funny.
Like, it's just a running thing with us, but yeah. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but no.
And isn't it funny how things change so quick? Like that, like little joke now, would be received totally differently now.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, like,
But,
and it's like everything. And then I know we're probably gonna get some comments, people being like, "It doesn't matter about the time," and it kind of does, right? Because some things that we know today are land a certain way with people back in the day. It was just so commonplace. And like with the more we learn and the more we are exposed to things, we learn how it's impactful. But back then it was my husband and I just did it as a running joke. Like it was nothing.
It wasn't even anything that could be impacted back then either, because stuff just didn't exist as well.
Yeah.
And
that's very true.
I think people had more of a sense of humor 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
I don't think people sought out strife.
Yeah.
Right? You took things for what they were in the context of what they were. And if the word choice was less than desirable, you just went with it because you understood the context of it, which brings us full circle to the tittle, sir, because you know it's an I because of the word. That looped.
It hurts my autism when
I know it does, and I'm
important rules are not followed. And you don't have to apologize. It's funny.
I don't think it's an important rule though, and I am a selective rule follower. I will follow a rule if I think it makes sense, and I don't see the value of a tittle, but I do enjoy saying tittle.
Be happy. It drives people crazy. That's such a good mug. But yeah, I think it is kind of funny that I feel that as an autistic person, I'm often a paradox. Like, aspects of my mind crave routine and rules, but I'm really demand averse and I hate unfettered authority with no reason behind it. I hate rules where there's...
Sounds like you're in constantly internal struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Yeah. So when I was working at this one university, there was like a bridge over the river, but it was being closed for construction, right? But there was nothing happening. It was about 11 o'clock at night. We're all going to the local bar and clubs and stuff. And so like the construction, like they put up those railings to block it off. And then all the Brits and the Americans just broke through the construction site. We were walking across the bridge, and all the Germans, like it literally was nationality driven. All the Germans were waiting at the end of the bridge and they wouldn't cross because the construction site said you couldn't do it. But all of the Brits and Americans were like, "Yeah, we're fine. There's no one here. Don't worry. The bridge isn't going to collapse."
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've had friends like that where we'll see, like, I will, if there's, even if the light's red, there's no cars coming, I'm like, let's beeline it across the street. I'll get across the street and turn around. My friend's still waiting on the corner for the lights changing.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. But you go to Germany, right? And then that is what they're like on the whole. I mean, obviously there's, for bloody social media, there is individual differences. Not everybody follows the rule. But on the whole, Germany is much more of a rules-driven and rules-following society than we are. And one of my mates I was out there visiting, like she just wait until the man went green and told me off for walking across the road.
Interesting.
Before.
Are you looking for fun new glasses that won't break the bank? Go to Zeelool.com. They have daily flash sales. You can find frames as low as $2. Prescription, non-prescription, sunglasses, they have it all. Use my promo code to save. Did I tell you about that study?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll tell you now, or I'll tell you again. So I forget who ran it. I'll get the whatevs. So whoever ran the study picked 10 European countries and took 12 wallets. In the wallet, they put ID, a photo, like a family photo, and some cash. And they dropped the wallets randomly around these cities to see which of the cities were the most honest. And we'll put it over here somewhere, or over here, wherever you decide to put it. We'll put it. So the most honest city, like 11 of 12 wallets were returned. Wow. The least honest, or country, not city, country. So Portugal, who is a very religious country, only 1 of 12 wallets were returned. And it wasn't even returned by someone Portuguese. It was someone from Denmark who was on vacation in Portugal. Wow. Mm-hmm. And then the other 11, I don't know if you know this, but like, were they just left there, or did people nick them? They nicked them. Yeah. So they saw it and went, yoink. And they... One of the things I just struggle with in general, I think, and it does come to this autism side, that I'm such a scientist, and I am, like, even though it's mild, I am autistic, that like I can get stuck down that rabbit hole. And then, so you and I, just for example, in that conversation, we're kind of talking about different things, but in my little dumb head, they're the same thing. And I'm trying to talk about things scientifically to somebody when that's not the position they're coming from. Like, you're coming from it from a societal, cultural perspective, but I'm not in that mindset, so I struggle to understand what you mean. Like, take it, last episode we were talking about the woman with the mask, and then so I was being super scientific about it. So I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. I'm just being a scientist. I'm explaining something, but that's not the time nor place to do it. And then you come across as a bit of a patronizing dick, even though I'm not being one. Even though I'm not being one, it's the way it looks in a social media comment. But it's also like, we've had a lot of conversations where you're although mild, your autism, you take things literally, and I'm not accustomed to be taken, because I'm sarcastic and rhetorical, I'm not accustomed to be taken literally. So like, you'll ask questions and I'm like, are you? Yeah, come on. Are you really that dumb, dude? Like, I've got to be covered. There are some things where, like, I can't think of anything off the top of my head where I'll be like, okay, GVizzle, what does this mean? Because I don't understand. So, the one that we had yesterday was someone made a weird comment on one of my videos, and I sent it to you being like, what the fuck does that mean? But that's the face I made when I said, was like, what the fuck does that mean? And you were like, I'll find out. And you yeah. I did a deep dive. I tracked him down, figured out who he was. Like, it was a rhetorical question, buddy. I watched about 10 of his videos. It took me about 20 minutes to go through it all. And then my only response was, nah, he's just talking nonsense. He must have been stoned or something. You should have been a crime scene investigator. Yeah. And you were like, this isn't a CSI op. And I was like, dude, I'm autistic. Everything is a CSI op. Now I know. I should have figured it out sooner, because it's not the first time we've had that conversation, but hopefully the thing is like, because I live in that kind of world where I've worked in mental health and everything, I'm really attuned to other people's idiosyncrasies, is probably the best way to put it. I'm used to weirdness and just eccentricity, I guess. And like, so like, because I've dealt with that on literally a daily basis, like, so it's just second nature to me. And then of course, because of the autism thing as well, I'm very bad at understanding that somebody else in that moment doesn't know what I mean. And I struggle then to kind of explain to somebody, okay, like, to understand that they've misunderstood me, and then how to explain my way out of it so they understand where I'm coming from. This is why I get in trouble a lot with people. Like, well, I've known people in my life who will, like, upon realizing that someone's not understanding them, they don't think that like maybe I need to explain it in a different way. They'll just like say the same thing in the exact same way. It's like, no, I understood the words in the order that you said them.
Yeah, yeah. I don't understand the
Or like,
meaning.
or like I had like this has happened to me at work a couple of times where I'll disagree with somebody and it's like maybe you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm like, no, I understand completely what you're saying. I disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not a lack of comprehension, it's a lack of agreement on this front. Like we have a different point of view. And it's amazing that some people can't understand that other people would have a different point of view, right? Like they're very stuck in like this is the way it is and this is the way I'm right. And that's all there is to it. And you just don't think I'm right because you don't understand what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there's the thought that like there could be a differing opinion just never
occurs to them.
Never gets in there.
And I think this is one of the things about the pros about being autistic, really, is that we're so used to being misunderstood and having to understand where other people are coming from and stuff and have to pay attention to such small details. Is it makes us more attuned to that, and it's like, oh, okay, and then we're able to kind of be a bit more patient and figure it out. Although there was that one time a few months ago in the summer, and then we nearly had that full-blown argument, and but
yeah, we put each other in a timeout.
Yeah. But the funniest one about that was because both of us thought the other was doing something that they weren't. And it was because, and then we were getting both upset and frustrated with the other person because we're like, oh, you're being like everyone else. Like, you've never done this before. Why are you doing this now? You're not like this.
Yeah.
And then we found out that, like, oh, no, what we meant was something different. And
this was the problem with our communication because we weren't having a conversation. We were like sending each other voice messages. So I would send you 4 voice messages. You would respond to one, and then like it would be out of order, and it was just very complicated.
It was so funny. Well, it's hard, like, you know, having like a close friendship over like thousands of miles where you can't just like meet up and have a coffee.
And I was like walking the dogs an entire time. So I've got like a dog on the leash and I'm like frantically yelling into my phone.
Yeah. You goddamn idiot.
I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times.
Yeah. And I think that like the I think the funniest part for me with the autism stuff in that particular, like, I mean, that's like the only argument we've ever actually had, but it was that that I was trying to say something, like it was related to what you said a minute ago about how like people double down and stuff. Like, no, you just don't get it because you don't understand me, but I'm right. And the way I was saying it sounded like I was saying that. They're like, no, you just don't get it, you little lady, you know, just I'm right, you're wrong. But I was,
and I think that's one of the things that I have is that, like, much like you are demand adverse, I'm also like defiant by nature. So as soon as someone says like you should do this, I immediately want to be like, you should fuck off.
It's the same.
Like my hackles get up when I hear like you should. It's like
and it sounded like I was talking to you specifically. Because I hadn't made it clear.
That's why we need to start saying one. One should. One.
Yes. And that's what it's like to know an autistic person.
So I found it interesting. So I saw your video to Luke, and then I watched Luke's video about the connection with the cats. And I had a question for you because I worked with someone previously whose nephew was autistic. And I think I mean, if it is a spectrum, I don't know where he landed in it, but so they had a dog, and the dog unfortunately died as a result of the actions that the nephew had taken.
Okay.
And when they told him that the dog had died, he was like, "Oh, are we getting another dog?" And like so not knowing a lot about autism, and like she told me the story several years ago. So I always kind of assumed that was autism. And like when they tried to explain to him, like, you caused this to happen, he was like, okay, are we getting another dog or not? Like he just didn't connect emotionally with the dog. And like he was being bullied at school, and it was bothering his aunt and his mom more because he didn't realize he was being bullied. Like as far as he was concerned, these kids didn't want to play with him, and all right, they didn't want to play with them. So like I always thought that was the norm for autism. And like hearing you and Luke talk about your pets, like it's opened my eyes and knowing you for as long as I have to like that different range of it. So I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, it
The
makes
end.
sense. I understand what you're saying. Because the thing is like, it is, if you don't have much contact with autism, all you hear is that it's a spectrum and that autism affects people differently, but no one ever tells you what that means.
Yeah,
Like
I worked
how
with
he's,
someone whose son was completely nonverbal,
yeah,
and he would be prone to violent bursts. And so, like, until meeting you and like getting onto TikTok and being more exposed via social media, those are like the two examples I had of autism. So like
yeah.
that's what I thought it was.
They both sound very severe autism, particularly nonverbal. Is that means it's very extreme. And there might even be a learning disability as well. So learning disabilities, your IQ is 65 or less. And most people's IQ is between 90 and 110. It's like your general population. So 65 is you're really starting to get difficulties with navigating the world. And the reason why that kid would have had violent outbursts is because it's just frustration, because he's trying to tell people things and he thinks he's very clear about it. And then people just aren't getting it. And then that's why he just ends up having like a paddy fit or something and throwing things around or punching people, just because
I imagine that would be very like being able trying to even if you didn't think you were being clear, just not being able to communicate what you wanted to get across would be
exactly
terrible.
very frustrating. And imagine it's kind of like, it starts off like if you've got your hands tied behind your back and your nose is itching and you can't scratch it. yeah. And then that's how it starts, and eventually you'd get amped up kind of thing. Because there was I've been trying to remember the psychologist's name, but she's incredible, and her name's been escaping me for a year now, and I've been I wanted to do some videos about her, but she basically helped people in the UK to connect with autistic people, ones who are severely autistic and non-verbal, to communicate with them in their language. And like their language could be just like spinning something on the floor or just shaking some string or something like that. And how you communicate to them. So it's about how they show joy or sorrow or happiness or that sort of thing. And
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then like, through mimicry and all of that stuff, you can connect with them and make them happy, basically, and help them feel that like they're loved, because they've got all of the emotions are in here, but not all of us understand what those mean.
And it's amazing that there's people out there who want to understand, because it's so quick to give up on people or just ignore. Like there was, when I did that Kick-Ass Facts about Down syndrome, there was that artist, and her name is escaping me. When she was a young girl, her parents, she had Down syndrome. They put her into an asylum, and she was terrible in the asylum until they like gave her stuff to work with, and then she became this like world-renowned artist, because it was just a way that she needed to express herself, and she was unable to do so until somebody took the time to figure it out. Like your shit artist.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think that with the other kid with the dog, that's quite a hard one for me to dissect, because I don't know that kid. So I mean, how old was he at the time?
I think he was maybe 9 or 10.
Because maybe he hasn't had enough time to kind of develop to understand what's going on in his mind, because it doesn't mean that he's not feeling the sorrow. It's just that like his brain isn't capable of translating that into a way that you can understand it. It's like, it would be maybe a way to imagine it is like, on your computer screen, you see the representation of all the computer code, right? But imagine if it was just binary on your screen. That's what a lot of us are like, in the sense that like you can just kind of see the binary, but it makes no sense to you, because like we think we're showing you how we feel. In a way, we struggle with that ourselves, and then we're trying to translate that so that you understand it, but then you're not getting a coherent image, you're just getting a shitload of binary that makes no sense. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice way to explain it.
And I think that like with the dog thing, there's probably a bunch of other stuff going on there, like that is quite unusual. And it could just be that he is that severely autistic that maybe like for him, like, so for like me and Luke, we're able to form that emotional, empathic, sympathetic bond with these animals, and that's helped us with humans. and maybe he doesn't even have, this kid doesn't even have that component, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't feel. It just means that, like, trying to uncompartmentalize it and link everything together, the kid's probably struggling with.
Mm.
And then, because one of the things that kids in general don't understand is they don't understand the permanence of death and what it really means. That's where, like, you know, there's like research done on, and I suppose I have to reword that for TikTok or YouTube or something, but like child self-unaliving, I'll edit it to see which one is better. But so for child self-unaliving, like, they never go into it in really intending to do it properly like an adult would or a teenager would, because they don't understand the permanence of death. They don't understand the implications and consequences. They don't know what it means for themselves or the people around them. So he probably doesn't really understand what the dog being dead means. So it's just like, well, okay, the dog's not here anymore, so we're going to get a new one. Like, that dog's gone away now, so we're going to get a new dog. He doesn't understand that he's killed his dog.
Even the dog not being there anymore, like if they were like, the dog's gone, I would expect there to be some sort of,
but that's
like,
yeah, it's more like this in his head. So like inside him he would feel that because it's a change in his environment and all of that, but he's unable to show you that he feels that. And this is something that I like with the way that autism presents for me. This is something I struggle with, is that I find it quite hard to show how happy or sad I am, and also with understanding. So like my emotions, they tend to, like, imagine like here's like the middle, like you're just content, and most humans, I say humans is so that we understand. I'm a psychologist, this is so we understand what we're talking about. I'm not talking about other animals, but most humans, they'll go like this through the day, like that. Okay. Depend on their emotions. Mine kind of go like this, you know, so I get like a fraction. So if I get angry, it's very rare for me to get really blood boiling angry, you know, and like, you know, when you get so angry you just want to punch someone, it's very rare for me to feel that. I have testosterone, I'm a man.
But it's very rare for me to feel that way as well.
But you don't have testosterone though. It's not unusual for a man.
That's interesting. I was listening to a video of someone who was starting like early stages, or no, kind of chronicling their experiences with going on testosterone. And one of the things that he was comparing to pre-testosterone to post was like the anger and like the depth of that emotion was something that was so different for him, because he'd never, like, things that pre-testosterone wouldn't have bothered him after being on testosterone for a couple of months was like, why is this making me angry? Like he was having a hard time processing that.
Yeah, totally. This is just about trans care and all this gender affirming care. I think a lot of it is done really badly, and I don't think people like that guy are prepared properly for what they're about to go through. Like, testosterone is a huge thing, and it like, if you're not raised in a stable environment with good male role models, it's very hard to control testosterone and those urges. Like, this is like partially, it's not all of the reasons, and this is not an excuse for men to do what they do, but it's part of the reason why so many men commit violent crimes and why so many women are the victims of those violent crimes. Is like men who have been raised badly, they've never been taught how to control their inclinations, and they go, and then they might have been traumatized themselves, and their testosterone just amps up, particularly if they're drunk, just amps up, and then they act out on their trauma out in the world, or they'll just explode and hurt somebody that they see as a symbol of their pain. And then they're basically a fucking menace. That's like it's like an unregistered weapon. And I think it's very hard for women to get what that is like, and I think that I think it's something that's very much overlooked at the moment in society. Like with all this toxic masculinity stuff, it does bother me a lot, because it's like you're undermining what it means to be a man, and like, and you're not, I don't mean you specifically, obviously, and you're kind of like, you're not really grasping that. I don't think society's grasping how difficult it is to have testosterone.
And I think it's because you don't it's hard to put yourself into somebody else's shoes if you don't know what they're experiencing, right?
Yeah.
And like I think it's easy to just assume
Mm,
that male female the only difference is,
mm,
physiological. So
mm,
I don't know that a lot of people go down the road of thinking about the other hormonal differences
mm,
in it, in that I would never have thought that men and women would experience anger in a different way, or
mm.
right, or joy in a different way, because it just,
Yeah.
if like seeing people get angry about things, my perspective about anger has always been like it's kind of a useless emotion because
Yeah.
it doesn't change the circumstance of things. So you can sit
Exactly.
and fester and be angry, but it's
Mm,
not going to do anything differently.
yeah.
I wish I kind of felt that way about grief, because I know again when the dogs go.
Mm,
But for me, like, it's very short. If I get angry about something, I get angry about it and then I get over it pretty quickly, because
mm,
what's the point? But if I
yeah.
had like a simmering pit of testosterone, and I never would have thought that that would have been the case, because you just assume that people process things in the same way, or if they didn't, it's not hormonal, it's
Mm,
because of societal, cultural, how you were raised, what your family was like the
mm,
hormones never really factor into it, which I think is what makes it difficult for women to understand what men go through, but then also men to understand what women go through, because our
totally.
hormones are very different.
Yes.
They lead us to very different ways, where
Yeah.
it's where a man may get violent, a woman may get emotional,
Mm.
and
Oh,
it's
well, I think with women, it's worse in a way because there's a bigger unpredictability element to it. Because every woman experiences a period differently. And I mean, I'm just showing you that I know. Like, I'm not telling you about your own periods. I'm
thank
just
you for
showing you I get it.
mansplaining my
Yeah. And it just seems to be that because some women do get violent on periods, and some women do get tearful, and some women get like all sorts of like some people, women, it doesn't bother them. Some women get heavy periods and the pain's overwhelming. And I certainly think that companies and the health service need to account for that a lot more,
Mm.
you know?
And I think it's also more than just that. I don't know that, young boys and young girls, and neither of us are taught how to process our emotions properly,
Yeah.
right? Like, young boys aren't taught it's okay to cry,
Mm,
and it's okay to talk things through, and it's okay to be vulnerable, but also young girls aren't taught how to work through their feelings. We're
mm,
taught, like, if you're crying or you're emotional, it's just kind of fluffed off as like,
mm,
oh, she's just being such a girl. Like, we neither of us are
mm.
taught how to be
Yeah, yeah.
functioning. I think people forget that children are future adults, and they don't treat
Mm,
them as like, let's give you the skills that you need to move forward out of adolescence, or out of your young years into adolescence, into adulthood. And if you
exactly.
don't teach someone how to process their emotions when they're young, they're not gonna be able to figure it out when they're older.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you. It and I've certainly found that, like, just to support what you're saying there, that the two worst things to say to a woman when she's upset or angry or whatever is either you're being emotional or you're being defensive.
Yeah.
Never
Or are
say
you on the
those.
road?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I just feel like those are the worst things to say, because it is kind of like, yeah, I am fucking emotional because I've had to hide my emotions to keep you men happy.
Yeah. And don't be dismissive of it, right?
Yeah.
Let's work through. And that's like the one thing that I like about, like, when we fought that few months ago,
Mm,
we haven't known each other all that long. We've
mm.
never been in the same room together. So it would
Yeah,
have been really easy to just be like, you know what? Fuck it.
yeah,
We're
fuck
done.
you.
Yeah. But
Mm,
we both
mm,
were invested enough either in the friendship or in
mm.
making sure that the, like, empathy and giving a shit about the other person, that's like,
Yeah.
let's talk this through. And I think that's one thing that not enough people do,
Mm,
is let's talk this through and let's see where we can get
mm,
to an understanding, or
mm.
just let's figure it out. And I see that. I mean, I've only been on social media for like a year and a half,
Yeah.
right? Or like just under a year and a half. And like
Mm.
seeing all these things on TikTok and like all these different things, it's like, can we just talk it out? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Could we just like
let-
discuss
just,
things?
yeah, like, just to have a conversation, because so
Mm,
many things that's what frustrates me about like a lot of TV and movie shows,
mm.
like especially the romantic comedy. Like
Yeah,
the
it's all
whole
contrived.
genre is predicated on a lack of communication.
Yeah, yeah. Because that's the only way it can work. Because it's so dumb.
Exactly. Like I made a video way back when about saying like Three's Company was such an underrated show, right? Like it was done in the 70s. It was three people living platonically. And like, yes, at the time, the things that happened were funny at the time. Now we can look back and be like, oh, Jack Tripper was a little bit problematic, but it's not like he ever assaulted them or anything. But then somebody made a comment about like the whole show was about a misunderstanding. It's like, yeah, so is every other sitcom out there. I mean, one of the biggest Friends episodes was we were on a break. That whole thing. So
yeah, there's just one giant misunderstanding. And then it's the thing is that people don't learn from it though. Like you're watching this show, it's a chance to learn something about how to resolve situations.
It's like you watch a movie where, you know, woman and friend are walking down the street. Hey, isn't that your boyfriend? Who's he having lunch with? And instead of just being like, hey, who'd you have lunch with today? Ensue an hour and a half of checking your email, looking into your phone, being sneaky, like just. And then as watching that, like people can sit in the theater or sit in their living rooms and watch it and be like, bitch, just ask the question. But then when it happens to you in your own life, you don't. You don't do that. Because I don't think people don't want to ask questions they don't want the answers to.
Yeah, which is like people do it at the doctors all the time, don't they?
Yeah. Everywhere. Like it's you don't want to ask who is that person you're with because you don't want to hear, oh, I've been having an affair.
Yeah.
You don't want to distract. You don't want to be like, what is this big ass lump here? Like you don't want to know.
Yeah, true. Though, like this is again where I think I'm just a different species. Like, because I do want to know. I will ask these questions.
Same.
Same. And I'm wondering if that's what actually helped us resolve, like, and all the other times where that like something could have turned into an argument that we never noticed, is because there's always that dialogue.
Yeah. You know. And I think that's why my husband and I mean, we've been together for almost 27 years. I think that's part of the reason why. It's because we don't let, not only we don't let things sit and fester, but if we're starting to go down that path, we'll be like, let's take it back.
Take a chill.
Let's talk. Let's talk this through. Right. Like, and I think that's just a general, either it's a lack of communication or a fear of confrontation that is so prevalent and such an easy fix. Like, yes, things are uncomfortable, but they're uncomfortable in the short term versus potentially being uncomfortable for
it's like time. It's like everything in your life has shown you that if you sweep your problems under the rug and ignore them, they get way worse.
There was someone I used to work with, and she was a project manager, and on every project, like there was always that one person who would try to hide that they'd been shitting the bed the entire time, and she was like, listen, bad news doesn't get better with time. Just tell me now and we can problem solve. Because by the time you get to a point where you're like, I'm fucked. Everybody's fucked.
Because you've got you've got contracts to fulfill, you've got tenders from clients and stuff. Like you can't shit the bed at the end when you need to submit your work. You know, part of the journey of becoming a good employee and like making good on your contract and your production targets or whatever is shitting the bed. You will do that for the first couple, and then
that's how you learn. I think people just are so afraid of making themselves either vulnerable or saying, I don't know. I worked with someone who felt that by going on meds for her anxiety was going to be like a failure on her part, that she can't deal with it. So she's got to get meds. And she didn't want to go and ask for it. And it's like, asking for help is the bravest thing anyone can do, because we've all been socialized that you've got to suck it up and deal with it and do it yourself. And if you need help, you're such a snowflake. Where being able to say, I'm struggling and I need, like that, putting yourself out there, I'm not struggling. And just saying that sentence was putting that out there into the world and making yourself vulnerable is the bravest and scariest thing, but it's also the best thing that you can do for yourself, because it's in a moment, right? It feels shitty for that moment where you're saying, I need help. But then when you get the help, you don't have to struggle anymore. And you don't, hopefully, and you don't have to continue to feel like you're constantly below water.
And the people around you, their response to your request for help and support, whether it's like with a bit of work or with your emotions or whatever, their response to you will tell you all you need to know about whether you should be there or not. It's
absolutely. if the one time you reach out for help, your so-called friends aren't there to help you,
Yeah.
then
Fuck them.
then yeah, fuck them. But like, also, what were you to them?
Yeah.
Right? Like, were you just like, oh wait, you're just supposed to be the funny friend? Now that you actually have a problem,
Yeah.
oh,
Exactly.
you joke, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I wish I could just download my brain into like some kind of format so that people could understand where I'm coming from, and then they could just get my knowledge, and then they could see that everything's going to be all right.
I think it was the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds.
That's a good.
Which it didn't do very well, but I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But like, if people were like video game characters where you could see their stats, right?
Yeah.
You could see their health.
Code.
If you could see like their health bar and their other bars, then I think we would be more cautious with one another and being able to like take the time to understand with that. But you've got to rely on people giving you that information, and people are so afraid to give that information out that the whole world is a mishmash of misunderstanding.
Yeah, totally.
That should be what the episode is called. Mish-Mash of Misunderstanding.
Yeah.